fellow double and shroud enthusiasts, rejoice! Hello everyone. Reaper changes for Dawntrail have finally been revealed, and as a Reaper main, I want to share my thoughts and analysis on how Reapers will be affected, particularly those that play on extreme, savage and ultimate levels of difficulty. Now, to preface, I'm not the top Reaper, nor am I a theory crafter, but it is my main in Endwalker. I've gotten a few 90s and was even the 28th Reaper on 6.2 during a resource, so I do know a thing or two about Reaper. That said, I'll be approaching this with the standard gameplay at endgame level in mind. I also want to preface that the information from the Dawntrail media tour is subject to change, so we can expect things, especially potency numbers, to change upon release. Be that as it may, I will still be talking about the potency numbers, as I do believe that the relative strength of the different actions should still be similar upon release. Also, I'll be referring to some of the information that was shared from the balance mentors here and there when needed, as they are the experts of theory crafting after all. Alright, without further ado, let's take a look at the changes we'll be receiving for Dawntrail. Before we look at the new actions, let's take a look at what changed for us prior to level 90, as it can be a good indicator of how much the core gameplay of a job has changed. And I'm happy to report that before level 90, our kit is more or less the same, with some new quality of life improvements. One change we're receiving is that our ranged filler GCDs, Harp and Harvest Moon, are finally gonna grant 10 soul gauge on use. And although this is a minor change, it is actually really good for us. For Reaper, having 100% melee uptime is very important, because our gauge is resource negative. So missing any melee GCDs will result in us not having enough gauge for a double and shroud earlier into a fight. With this change however, we can happily use our ranged GCDs and not worry too much about how it will affect our burst windows. This will be helpful for Reapers at all levels, from newbies who are still learning how to maintain 100% action uptime, to weak 1 clearers who tend to employ safer strats that require disconnecting from the boss. Another change before 90 is that Plentiful Harvest will no longer grant 50 shroud gauge, and instead grants us a buff called Ideal Host, which in turn gives us 1 free use of Enshroud. Functionally, this doesn't really change anything for us most of the time, as we very rarely have overcapping issues, especially in full uptime fights. However, this might be more useful in ultimates, where we tend to hold and pool resources. For instance, let's say we enter a phase with 100 gauge. In normal circumstances, we would do our reopener burst with an Enshroud, Plentiful Harvest, then Enshroud again, and finally Gluttony. But using Gluttony here might lose us a use if the boss jumps away right before it comes off cooldown. In Endwalker, we can't use Gluttony before the second Enshroud since we will overcap on Shroud. But in Dawntrail, we now have the option to use Gluttony earlier and potentially get an extra Gluttony in that fight. These situations probably won't occur too often. Nevertheless, when they do happen, they might make a significant impact, as it may give us just enough gauge for 1 extra use of Enshroud in the final phase. Those are the only changes we'll be receiving before level 90, which is good if you love Reaper's current gameplay. For better or worse, everything else works the same way. You still have to wait 6 seconds to activate Plentiful Harvest, so you still gotta do some fillers. Enshroud is still 15 seconds recast, so double Enshroud is still possible, and Harvest Moon still requires 5 seconds of cast time if you want to use it again. Oh, and using Enhanced Harp now reduces the cooldown from Ingress and Egress, but off the top of my head, I can't really think of any fights in Endwalker where this might have been useful. Maybe this will change in Dawntrail, and there might be fights where we will be required to run from one corner of the arena to another corner of the arena, and then back to the original spot again. Now that we've caught up on the changes up till level 90, let's see what we get as we level up to level 100 in Dawntrail. At level 92, we'll be getting a new OGCD Enshroud action called Sacrificium. When entering Enshroud, we now gain a buff called Oblatio, and when we have both Enshrouded and Oblatio buffs, we are able to use Sacrificium. To put it simply, each time we Enshroud, we are given 1 cast of Sacrificium, and we can only cast it in that 1 Enshroud window. If we fail to fit it in, then that's 500 potency gone. 500 potency is way stronger than Lemuria's Slice, and almost comparable to Gluttony. The addition of Sacrificium further incentivizes us to execute double Enshroud windows, as we would be able to squeeze 2 Sacrificiums within the burst windows. Likewise, for more niche optimizations like the triple enshroud port windows, we just get more free damage under our port window. As amazing as this ability is, it's also not all sunshine and roses. Assuming that we do a regular enshroud window, it means that our enshroud window is tighter and more punishing, as we only have one OGCD of leeway. And when you have to weave in a feint for red, white and tank busters, you have to be very on point with your OGCD executions. All in all, it's a relatively boring ability on paper, but with the limitation of only being able to use during the already restrictive enshroud, I think it's a great ability as it raises the difficulty of REAPER while also opening up new ways of optimizations depending on when you use it. It's also AoE, so if we get multi-target fights, we're gonna be eating good. Next, at level 96, we'll be getting Executioner's Gibbet, Gallows and Guillotine. These are new and stronger versions of our short generators that are only usable after Gluttony, which now grants a new buff called Executioner instead of the usual Soul Reaver. Functionally, this doesn't change our moment-to-moment gameplay, but with it being a tremendous 820 potency per GCD, this might be something that we want to squeeze into our buff windows. Especially when you take Gluttony into account, that's a total of 1340 potency just for one GCD, which is 220 potency more than Communal, and 120 potency more than our new level 100 action. Comparatively in Endwalker, using Gluttony and Gibbet only gives 1020 potency, which is strong, but still weaker compared to Communal. While I'm not entirely sure where Gluttony and Executioner's Gibbet and Gallows will fall within our new burst, I think it's very likely that we want to squeeze it within red buffs. Lastly, at level 100, we'll be getting Perfectio, our new 2-minute GCD. At level 100, after using Plentiful Harvest, we'll be getting a buff called Perfectio Occulta. But this alone doesn't allow us to cast Perfectio. It is only after we cast Communal with Perfectio Occulta, then we can get Perfectio Parata, which finally allows us to cast Perfectio. To put it simply, after finishing the free enshroud phase from Plentiful Harvest, then Perfectio is usable. Perfectio is a pretty nice action for our level 100 milestone, featuring an enormous 1200 potency, which is the highest potency GCD in our entire kit. So, your first thought, like mine, is probably that we're just gonna slap it within our 2-minute burst windows, right? Well, double enshroud enjoyers would know that the double enshroud window is already really tight in Endwalker, such that we already aren't able to put all our big hitting actions within the burst window. REAPER is all about opportunity cost, so we have to pick and choose what we can fit within the burst. Despite the high potency of Perfectio, it's not immediately clear if we are able to fit it within our burst windows, especially when we consider that we can only cast this after the second enshroud. To give an idea of the earliest we can cast Perfectio in a burst window, we first need to cast Arcane Circle. Then we need to wait 6 seconds to be able to cast Plentiful Harvest, which itself will inflict a 2.5 seconds GCD. Then we need to go through the entire enshroud, which lasts 8.5 seconds. So by the time we can actually cast Perfectio, we're already 17 seconds within our buff window. That leaves us with only 3 seconds worth of buff time, which is typically only 1 GCD. And that's if we assume that we are casting Plentiful Harvest immediately when it's available, which might not be the case if we are gonna squeeze more abilities like Sacrificium within our first enshroud. And likewise, there are many other powerful actions that we want to use like Gluttony and the new Executioners, Gibbet and Gallows. That's a lot of words, but to just sum it up, despite it being our highest potency GCD, due to the many conditions within our kit, we might not actually be able to fit Perfectio within our double enshroud window. And according to the REAPER theory crafting wizards in the Balance Discord, it seems that we probably won't be using Perfectio under buffs until the 6-minute window. Luckily, this may not be entirely a bad thing, because Perfectio Parata starts counting down from when we cast our second Communal. It gives us flexibility to disconnect from the boss without losing as much damage. For comparison, we will be doing 900 potency more than if we have to use Harp. We don't know if Perfectio will actually be outside of our burst windows until Dawntrail drops, but I do like the flexibility that the scenario might bring. It's also AoE, so that's more free damage for us. Before I go into the next section, there's one more important change that will affect REAPER significantly, and it is that red buff windows are all 20 seconds now. First of all, where we use our Arcane Circle in our opener will likely change, as we probably want to use it at the second or third GCD, with every other class now to align our red buffs and big bursts. Needless to say, this will have a downstream impact and change how we execute our 2-minute burst windows later on. Secondly, a longer rate buff window means that our opener and burst windows are going to change even more, since we essentially have 5 more seconds of bursting to fill. At least for our level 90 rotation, this would mean that our burst window will likely be more lenient and easier to execute. And last but not least, aligning our rate buff to the rest of the party means that it will be a lot easier to execute when the party wants to delay the burst window. As of Endwalker, when the party delays the burst window to an arbitrary timing, like on a shot caller signal, it's really difficult for Reapers to adjust, as we not only want to cast Arcane Circle 5 seconds earlier compared to everyone, but we also want to start our burst prep 9 seconds before actually casting that Arcane Circle. While I don't know if burst prep will still be a thing, this buff alignment would at least make these niche realignment situations more manageable. Alright, that's all the adjustments and new additions we have for Reaper. So, what do all these changes mean as a whole for Reapers? Well, as I mentioned at the start of the video, the general playstyle Reapers have will likely remain the same as Endwalker, with the same gauge generation gameplay loop and a double shot burst window to execute. However, it should be noted that how we execute our burst windows are very likely to change compared to Endwalker, even at level 90. As we go all the way to level 100, our difficulty floor will become slightly higher with the addition of Sacrificium in our type and shot window, and the difficulty ceiling will also raise as Sacrificium and Perfectio will introduce new ways for the Reaper to optimize their rotation. There are further non-standard optimizations that raise the ceiling even higher, but I won't be delving into those optimizations, as they're just way too complex for me. The Balance Discord has discussions about how these changes will open up gameplay for non-standard Reaper, so do look into the server if you're interested to see how deep the rabbit hole goes. Now, as exciting as Reaper may be going into Dawntrail, there is a glaring issue that we have to consider, which is negative gauge generation. Endgame Reapers would know that right now, our rotation is gauge negative, which is to say, we lose gauge further into the fight. For instance, right now in a 100% melee uptime scenario, we will have 40 soul and 50 shroud by our 2-minute window, 30 soul and 50 shroud by our 4-minute window, 20 soul and 50 shroud by our 6-minute window, 10 soul and 50 shroud by our 8-minute window, 0 soul and 50 shroud by our 10-minute window, and finally 90 soul and 40 shroud by our 12-minute window. This is because, at the rate that we are spending our resources, we need 123 seconds to be gauge neutral, but we only have 120 seconds before each 2-minute burst windows, resulting in a loss of 10 soul every 2 minutes. This effectively means that we are on a timer, as by the 12th minute, we can no longer do a double and shot on time. And to make it worse, whenever there is melee downtime or encounter downtime, our gauge negativity manifests earlier. For example, if you did P7S, you might have noticed that our gauge leeway was becoming tighter and tighter as the fight went on, and suddenly, oops, I don't have enough gauge for my 2-minute burst window anymore. This is because of all the downtime in the fight as a result of knocking us into the air, causing us to have issues recuperating our gauge. As I mentioned earlier, in Dawntrail, with Harp and Harvest Moon both granting us soul, we no longer need to worry about gauge when we need to disconnect from the boss. That's a good change. However, Dawntrail introduces something which further impacts our negative gauge generation, and that is with Perfectio. You see, Perfectio doesn't give any gauge, and because it takes up a precious GCD slot, it means that we need 125.5 seconds to be net neutral. Another way to look at it is that we are essentially sacrificing one of our 1-2-3 combos for Perfectio, which means we are now losing 20 soul every 2 minutes. If we were to continue using the Endwalker opener in Dawntrail, then we will be unable to do a double and shroud by the 8th minute. Luckily, the wizards in the balance have found out that, due to the delay in casting AC in our new opener, we will start with a little more gauge than before, so despite losing 20 soul every burst window, we can still do a double and shroud at the 8-minute mark, and only encounter gauge negativity at the 10-minute mark. While this mitigates the issue, it's still an issue nonetheless. In fights that are 10 minutes or longer, our burst will desync from the party, and it will only get worse the further the fight. And once you take downtime into account, then we're going to desync way faster. Seeing as we have so many hard-hitting GCDs now, maybe there's still a way to salvage this, such as an alternate double shot window, where we sacrifice a communal out of rate buffs. There are many variables where this issue will significantly affect Reaper, so only time will tell how badly it will affect us. In conclusion, If you already enjoy Reaper, you're probably going to continue having fun. While we still don't know for sure what our new burst window will be, all the new changes have made Reaper's burst window optimizations a lot more interesting, as there are so many ways you can perform it by shifting GCDs around. Of course, there's going to be a standard rotation that focuses more on consistency, but for those who want to go above and beyond, you will have more levers to adjust now. Personally, despite there being not a lot of changes for Reaper, I'm not too sure about how I feel about the job going into Dawntrail. On one hand, I do like all the changes we're receiving, as the changes have surprisingly more depth than I initially thought when I saw the new actions with regards to how it affects our entire kit. However, I feel that there's just not enough changes to fix some of the issues that I have with Reaper, one of which is the negative gauge generation that I explained earlier. Perfectio feels somewhat incomplete, because it worsens our gauge issue when it could have fixed it. Perfectio's animation is a lot like Plentiful Harvest, where it features both the Reaper and the Avatar working together. Heck, it's even a follow-up to Plentiful Harvest. It's kind of weird and disappointing that the thematic similarities are there, but it didn't translate on a gameplay level. I think it would have been cool if it gave 10 soul and 10 shroud gauge instead of not giving anything at all. It helps a ton gameplay wise, and it fits thematically too. Another issue I have with the lack of change is that Harvest Moon is still something that we cast once or maybe twice each fight. I am a big fan of Harvest Moon and how it encourages us to solve downtime mechanics in a different way by trying to find a spot to stand still and cast for 5 seconds. I really love it. But outside of ultimates, there's so little downtime where we can actually charge it up. Taking a look at the Savage fights in Endwalker, P1S, P2S, P4S Part 1, P4S Part 2, P6S, P7S, P8S Part 1, P9S, P10S, P11S, P12S Part 1 and Part 2 are all full uptime fights. That's 12 out of 15 fights that we have access to Harvest Moon only once per fight. And if you died before you used it, it's gone. There's no other damaging action in the game where you only ever get to use it once per fight, and it baffles me that it's still a thing. One idea I've been throwing around is for Communio to recharge Harvest Moon. This would help to tie Harvest Moon into the rest of the kit as well, since it's like a sore thumb sticking out of Reaper's kit right now. And if one Communio is too fast, then make it 2 or 3 Communios, whatever to make Harvest Moon more accessible. This issue isn't going to make Reaper a terrible class, but it just feels like a waste that such a flexible tool in our kit is only usable once per fight. Despite that, I still think that Reaper is getting a big W for Dawntrail, but we'll have to see how Dawntrail's new encounter design will affect Reaper. Alright, that's all I have for the Reaper, and I hope you learned something today. Everything is still subject to change, so I hope that they can make a great kit shine even better. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys for the next video. Goodbye.